Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Thursday, July the 17th. I'm Zach Ewing, joining you virtually today along with Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris, three esteemed members of our Saints coverage team. We are all back together again, sort of, virtually, but all off of vacation. Kind of didn't want to drive into the studio in today's weather, and with all of us kind of coming back from trips of our own. So this is the best we got, but we're going to make it work, guys. Is everybody rested and ready for camp next week?
I don't think I'll ever be rested and ready for camp whenever I'm starting. I do want to complain, though. Can I complain for a second? Because I've just been hearing and reading about this weather all week, and it's tropical depression is going to bring rain, and it's been raining less since this weather is supposed to be landing than it has in the last 3 weeks.
It's overrated. I'm with you on that. Totally agree.
There does seem to be a little bit of
really the old man yelling at a cloud right now, bring the rain.
You really are old man yelling at a cloud.
Well, I mean, it's I think what Luke's saying is all the, I know the meteorologists locally do a great job, but it always feels like there's a panic thrown out, including NOLA ready, which my neighbors were all parking in their front yards up on the neutral ground and stuff, and it hardly even rained.
Hey, I got a call from my 90-year-old grandmother this morning. I hope everything's all right. It's it hasn't rained 1 inch here. It rained 6 inches 7 days straight the last 2 weeks. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But Luke, who sent us the text this morning saying we should do it virtual? I can't remember. Was it someone here?
I believe it was Mr. Zach Ewing.
I think it was me.
Was it? Oh, I thought it was Jeff.
Yeah. No, well, but part of it was weather related, and part of it was I also just got back from England, and I don't know what time of day it is, and I don't need to be driving.
Oh, no, I mean
that was my excuse. But anyway, we will talk Saints on this podcast, believe it or not. We complaints about the weather notwithstanding, the Saints start training camp on Tuesday, which means Mickey Loomis will give his press conference. We'll get to start to talk to players. We'll have some real actual football to talk about and discuss and watch, at least the training camp edition. And then 2 weeks in, we'll all be tired of training camp and ready for the seasons to start. But it is that time of year. So what we're doing today is continuing our series that you all did last week, or I guess it was Luke, Jeff, and Rod last week who went through offensive position by position and kind of just laid out some realistic expectations for 2025. So today we'll do the same thing with the defense. And we will start with edge rushers, which, as we've discussed a couple of times in the offseason, are kind of their own category in this defense. And so we've split them out, even though they're technically going to be outside linebackers. Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, these guys will be standing up. How does that change things for you, Luke? And is there reason to hope that these guys can take a big step forward in this defense?
I mean, not really. To me, I'm intrigued to see what it looks like, but I'm going to kind of keep my expectations pretty low. I think the one guy who I think I'm most optimistic for in this new defensive scheme is Chase Young, and that's probably a fool's errand to be optimistic about Chase Young. People have been optimistic about him and looking forward to seeing great things from him for 5 years, and it's just never really produced at that level. But I do think that he was their best pass rusher last year. I think this scheme just logically feels like it fits for him. I'm excited to see what he looks like. I just don't know, as an entire group, if there's going to be a lot of juice there, even with this new scheme.
Okay, so that's I don't want to say that's the pessimistic view, but it's probably the realistic view.
That's what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah. Is there a reason for more optimism than that, Matt or Jeff?
Where's the bell at?
We'll find a virtual bell.
I do think that, we've seen Chase get close. The pressures last year. I think maybe the most encouraging thing about Chase Young this offseason is that he's been healthy. We haven't really seen that the last few off seasons. Even last year he was recovering from the neck surgery. He can go about this offseason and actually work toward improving his game for a change. And, we've seen all the workout photos and the videos that he likes to upload. Will that pay off? I'm not sure, but this was a guy who was drafted in the top 5 for a reason. He was a second overall pick, had a tremendous rookie year. And I thought he played fine last year. And, we'll see how the rest of the rotation does. I mean, Carl Granderson always seems to have a really nice, promising stretch at some point of the season. He kind of fades down the stretch, but he's a good overall player. Cam Jordan, maybe in a reduced role, can contribute something maybe here or there. We saw him kind of come on strong near the end of last season. And it does feel like this group has a little bit of a refreshed view after the way that they closed last season, specifically when Brian Young took over the defensive line. He's still around, not officially in that role, but we'll see. I still think they're overall like a guy short, but I think it is maybe enough to get by for the time being.
And I think, if you're looking for an optimistic view, I think Matt makes a good point. He signed a new deal. I think some of the pressure is off of him now. He was at a career crossroads going into last season. Not that he broke the bank, but it's still a nice deal. Maybe he plays a little more relaxed without having to feel like he's having to prove his worth of being the old, top 5 pick. And I would say him being down in weight, I think they've got him down to 265. I think that could be beneficial to him. I mean, I don't think he's naturally a 280-pound guy. And so maybe he does produce and finally get there, because he's always ranked high among the top pressures on the team and in the league, but he never seems to finish. And that's kind of the knock on him so far. So maybe he does blossom in this new scheme, but I'm with Luke. I got to see it, to kind of believe it.
Yeah, I think if they got 8 sacks out of him, I think that'd be a big win. 8 is not like, it's not going to put him anywhere near the league. He'd probably be like maybe top 20 in the NFL with that number, without looking at what last year's sack totals were across the league. But I think that would be good if they could get. That would be a career high for Chase. It would mean he's finishing on more of the pressures. I think I'd be pretty happy about that, considering what they paid him this offseason, which is what, $17 million a year.
Yeah. Did they do any 3-4 in Washington with him?
Not really. He did say that the way that they lined up initially, his rookie year was similar to this one. They didn't change the scheme, but they changed the way that they attacked his second year. He says it's similar. I don't think it exactly is, but we'll see. I mean, he might know better than me in this case, because
I think he might.
He's the one playing football, and I'm just a scrub. So I will defer to his expertise.
And I got a feeling they're probably going to be in a lot of 4-man lines and pass situations. This is going to be a hybrid transition from the 4-3 to the 3-4. And I think Brandon Staley is a smart guy, and he's going to play these guys where they're comfortable and also where they can produce. So I don't think we're going to always see them in this traditional 3-4, especially in sub packages.
Yeah, but I do think it is going to look different, though, Dunk. I know that's not what you're saying, but I do think that when you visualize this defense in its sub packages, I think it's still, the front will still look different than the traditional 4-2-5 nickel look. I think they're gonna have a little bit more versatility there as far as what the front looks like. It's not just gonna be 4 guys with their fingers in the ground.
I also think it's interesting that this coaching staff has a dedicated edge position coach, and Jay Rogers. He was the Atlanta Falcons defensive line coach last year. But having someone to work with those guys specifically, I wonder if that could maybe be a good thing in the long term and kind of boost them over a course of a season.
They need it. I mean, that's an area that they've struggled the last few years. And I think, look, Staley's known for trying to generate pass rush from all positions, all levels. I think that's definitely going to be part of Alontae Taylor's role, and even the second level guys like Demario Davis who've shown that ability in the past.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because as we move into other position groups, the pressures don't have to just come from these guys. But I also don't know, maybe they have fewer edge setting responsibilities in the run game and things like that. Is this a situation you think where Chase Young, of course, as we've talked about, has the pressure rate but not the sacks? There may be some regression in that anyway. But now that he doesn't have maybe as many responsibilities, is it fair to say maybe you could just expect a natural uptick there?
Maybe. I also think Chase Young sets the edge pretty well as a run defender.
Right.
Actually, maybe something he does pretty well. So I would want to tap into that if I were them. But
I do think I think we've heard it from Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, like that. The primary objective for these guys is to get after the passer.
Yeah.
It's different than the quote unquote edge that we've seen in the Dennis Allen defenses, where they were traditional 4-3 defensive end, where they were setting the edge as run defenders and getting after the passers. It's why they had to be 280 pounds. I think it's these guys, they are going to 95% of the time, like just get after the passer, and then 5% of the time drop into coverage and try not to get absolutely burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, those 3 interior guys, that's their job basically.
Yeah.
They want to tie everybody up and let the edge and the second level get to the ball.
You do worry about the coverage aspect of it. I'm glad you brought that up, because we're talking reasonable expectations. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was Xavier Valade, who has since been cut. It was one of our like mini camp observations, like, throw of the day from Spencer Rattler, whoever it was, hitting him on a wheel route. I was like, yeah, that's like a fringe NFL player who's like 5 yards behind Chase Young in coverage.
Yeah,
it's just like you just don't want to see that too often, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. There's gonna be plays where it looks really bad, but like you just hope the rest of it looks really good.
Who is the most likely guy in this group to kind of make a name for himself and pop up and help out? Because the sum has been maybe less than the equal of the parts in recent years. So is there somebody who can come in and maybe hold his own better in coverage than what the Saints have? I mean, is Isaiah Foskey?
If we're talking about reasonable expectations, I'm not going to bring up Isaiah Foskey's name at all.
Fair enough.
There's nothing I could say that'd be a reasonable expectation for him. If he gets on the field, like, that's a win for them. If he gets on the field and plays well, which is something we just haven't seen in this is his 4th year, right?
Yeah.
So,
a guy I'm keeping my eye on, I don't know necessarily if it's in coverage for defensive end, but I'm interested to see if Chris Rumpf can kind of crack a role make the roster. He's a guy who played with Staley or under Staley at a pass stop, and similar to Jonah Williams, who I'm sure we'll talk about later, like, I do think there's a benefit to having some of your guys here. And does that mean surpassing Isaiah Foskey? Like, that's Foskey and Rumpf are the 2 guys, like, I'm kind of watching for that last defensive end spot. And I think that'll be an interesting competition in camp.
Field takes too, the 7th round rookie. I want to keep an eye on him.
Oh, yes, that too.
Yeah, it's Foskey's 3rd year, just for the record, but still obviously not done anything the first.
3rd or 12th. I have no idea. He's played like 20 snaps.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to those 3 guys you mentioned on the inside in the 3-4. To me, this is a Brian Brzee discussion. Like, we can talk about Devon Godshaw and the Vernon Broughton, the rookie who was drafted in the 3rd round, and maybe some of they're going to be the unsung heroes, right? And Colin Saunders is there, and Shepard is there, and like there's just a bunch of bodies. But Brian Brzee is the guy to me who, if you want to take the optimistic view, like, hey, maybe this unlocks him a little bit more and frees him up to rush the passer more.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a chance that this kind of new scheme is something that for Brzee hides his weaknesses and emphasizes his strengths. Like, I think there's a chance that happens, and he turns into like a really, really like productive player in this defense. But like, again, like, there's also a chance, like what Jeff is saying, where his job is going to be to eat up blocks, and to divert attention away from the guys whose job it is to rush the passer. So, like, I think that if you just look at his pass rushing stats, that he compares favorably to some of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL. He's got more sacks since he came to the league than Jalen Carter does. The same draft class. He's right up there with guys like Jeffrey Simmons from Tennessee in terms of like pressure, sacks, etc. but I think PFF had him as the second worst graded run defender in among interior defensive linemen out of like 300 players, something like that. So that just can't that can't continue to be a thing in this defense. Otherwise, his snap percentage is going to continue to be kind of limited, and his impact is going to be limited.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing to me. I don't know, Jeff. Is it Vernon Broughton when the Saints drafted him in the third round? It was felt like a reach at the time, and now they're talking about starting him. I mean, when we talk about expectations, that's another one. Boy, he's got to live up to a lot early if that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think he's going to start. I mean, I think they want him to start. He's basically drafted because he fits this scheme, and they didn't really have anyone that fit the skill set that position's going to require. I think it's going to be a multi-year transition to this new scheme, and it'll be interesting to see how Brandon Staley and the other defensive staff, how they navigate it. Will it be incrementally getting to where they want to be? And because they got to try and win games now, they know they're not going to be a finished product by any means. The other thing that I think is important to note, and we'll talk about this in the days ahead, but they don't really have a true evaluation of what they've got right now, because the way the NFLPA rules are now, I mean, you really can't have any contact. So all the things that they normally would be evaluating are going to happen here in the second, third week of training camp. Even the first week of training camp is in shells. I mean, there's really no hitting until the second week. So this staff is going to be on a real accelerated timeline to try and figure out what they've got on both lines of scrimmage, because I don't think they truly know yet. Guys like Brian Brzee, how do they handle it in this new scheme? And I think Broughton is a guy they're counting on to be that interior run defender. He kind of fits the typical mode of what they want at that position. But I tell you the other thing I think is interesting is you got 16 guys now on this depth chart at defensive end, defensive tackle. I mean, that's a lot. So I think it speaks to the fact that they don't know exactly who's going to be in the mix in this final 53. And I think we could see some of these veteran guys, the people are familiar with, end up being, cuts. I think they might get cut as this team goes forward, because they really don't know how they're going to fit into this new scheme.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think they were kind of almost throwing – it felt like the reason to bring back Saunders and Shepard specifically was almost for cap reasons. They didn't want to have the dead cap money for their contracts, so they just smoothed it out and reworked the deals overall. But their place in the lineup, I think, is pretty interesting, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm right with you, Jeff. If one of those guys is cut, I wouldn't be surprised. But I also think they could still have a pretty prominent role. Broughton could start, but it also could be Saunders at the that other defensive end spot, and Devon Godshaw in the middle. I think those three spots, maybe, or two if you don't count Brzee, those are very much up in the air, I think.
Yeah, you talked about this. You guys talked about this with the O-line last week, but we don't know, man. I mean, that's one of the things we got to watch in camp here, as you said, Jeff. Especially once they start to finally put the pads on, we got to see how this all shakes out. But when I hear you talk about that, and Luke, I'm curious to know if you agree, and Matt too. But the Saints could be in for some serious growing pains here early in the season if you're forcing a lot of guys into new roles and new schemes and in a short period of time.
Yeah, and they're going to be facing some kind of funky offenses to start too, right? I mean, obviously, they know what Clint Kubiak's going to be doing in Seattle, but I think Drew Petzing's done some weird, quirky stuff, especially with the run game for Arizona. Kyle Shanahan is, I think, was one of the best offensive minds in football, and finds ways to expose defenses, especially somebody like Brandon Staley, who he worked with for all of last year. And then, obviously, Joe Brady with Buffalo. There's a legitimate chance that this looks really, really ugly for the first month of the season while they're figuring stuff out.
And I think the optimism you could have, though, is that we all know that this defensive line did not really mesh with Todd Grantham. And we saw them. Well, I mean, they obviously played a lot better after he was let go mid-season. And Bo Davis comes in, a totally new voice. They've got new staff along the front seven. Maybe they get something out of these guys because there is talent there. I mean, there's a lot of high draft picks in that group. They've invested a lot there. So the optimism would be maybe somebody does have a Zach Bond-like emergence under a new staff. I'm not saying they're going to be a Pro Bowler, but, it can happen. It happens around the league when you get a new scheme and a new voice in your ear.
Yeah, in terms of like transition, I do feel like this is very much a transition year for the Saints defense. But I actually feel like some of the is this the right fit for the scheme? Like getting their guys, I kind of feel like that's more on the back end. We'll get there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's a good place to move on. But I mean, again, we're trying to be realistic. We're trying to be reasonable. I think there's some cause for concern, but maybe the optimistic view, as kind of what you alluded to, Jeff, is how much worse can it get than it was last year for a while? So that's
right.
2 thumbs up. It can't get any worse.
Look, it all starts, and everyone will tell you this. Staley will tell you this. I mean, they got to get more physical up front. They got pushed around a lot last year for a group that's got that many high draft picks and, guys that have had production in the past. I mean, that Packers game, Broncos game.
Embarrassing at times.
Yeah, and those weren't injuries. I mean, most of those guys were there. So that – that's a little troubling, but also I think with a new staff and a new scheme, maybe these guys will be more inspired. It just seemed like the season took its toll, and we saw it in the run defense. I think they're better than their run defense showed last year, but I guess we're going to find out.
Sean Tucker.
Yeah.
Ring a bell?
Oh, man.
I know. But they run for like 200-something yards of the record.
More than he's run for in his entire career.
Well, I know because I picked him up in my fantasy league like a couple weeks after, and I don't think he gained 200 yards the rest of the year.
Missed the boat on that. Part of that equation too is the linebackers, and when we say linebackers in this defense, we're really talking the 2 middle linebackers. And Demario Davis, I think we saw for the first time in New Orleans maybe take a half a step back last year. He was still a pretty good player. The consistency maybe waned a little bit. He's going to have to be good though, right? I mean, like unless you're expecting, Danny Stutzman to come in as a rookie and play right away. Like Davis is still getting a ton of playing time in this defense and still is going to have to play a big role.
Yeah, I actually think he's the one of, you look at Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, like we can lump those old guys together. Kind of actually think he's maybe the one that has a chance of sticking around even next year. As long as the fall off isn't as severe, I think he's still pretty important to what they do. A guy smart will take him a long way in that type of situation. Jeff referenced it, but maybe Staley has him like go after the quarterback a little bit more, send him on blitzes. Like he's still very good north-south. It's just he's a step slower east-west, as Luke always mentions. But
I was stealing myself to not say the exact same thing I've said 15
times. You need a bell?
Yeah. The one thing I don't know if this is a concern troll or like an actual concern of mine, but I do think it's worth mentioning that Demario Davis was not a good fit in a 3-4 defense to start his career with the Jets and the Browns. And now that they're back in a 3-4, I don't think he's going to suddenly forget how to play football, and maybe all those years of experience will help him, but it's something I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like as Matt said, I've been pretty out there what I think about Demario as a player. I still think he's really, really good. I just don't think he's good in the same way that he was before, where you can just kind of really shut down entire parts of games for teams. Look, he missed a game last year. First time in his Saints career he missed a game, and he still finished with 136 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He was solid. I mean, 136 tackles is his best mark as a Saint. But there's like moments, You turn it on, you're like, that's concerning. Like he's missing stuff that he shouldn't be missing. And you know, I think he could still be like an important piece of this defense. I just think they cannot go into the season expecting him to be like an all-pro anymore.
Well, what's the backup plan?
To me, that means Pete Werner's got to step up. He's been solid. Like that, he needs to be better than solid to me. Like he needs to be more than just like I'm playing the right, fundamentally sound assignment. Like he's got to give you something else. Because like I mean, I think Danny Stutzman, you know, I don't think he's gonna be pushing for his job. They just paid Pete Werner like $8-9 million a year on an extension last year, but like, you know, this is a new scheme. Like if he's not out there like making plays, if he's just out there just not messing up, and Demario's not giving you like the all-pro Demario that we saw a couple of years ago, like I think, I don't know, I think there's a chance that Stutzman pushes for playing time.
Well, that's Matt. You've talked a lot about the depth and how that concerns you maybe more than anything. And this position, I think that's really crystallized. Like if Demario does take another step back, I mean, the guy's just, he's old for a football player. It's not outlandish to think he would take a step back. Pete Werner, he's just kind of a guy right now. If he doesn't take a step forward, I mean, Jalen Ford and Danny Stutzman are your backup. Like, they could be good. I mean, we don't know, but it just seems like you're kind of have a lot of faith in some unproven guys if it doesn't work out with the starters.
Yeah, like I actually think it's simultaneously like a very crowded position in terms of just bodies and guys. But I actually think the pecking order is like so defined that it's a relatively like clear group in terms of Danny Stutzman is your third linebacker. That was already kind of the case during OTAs. Like unless Nephi Sewell, DeMarco Jackson, Jalen Ford can push one of those, like it's just, I don't know. It's definitely like I talked about transition earlier, and this is kind of the well, I guess linebacker is still technically part of the front seven, but like you're getting into the point where like, okay, maybe they're going to have to find another linebacker next year. Maybe they sign someone if Demario doesn't return. Like it is just a group that kind of needs like an overall talent injection, I think. But Demario and Pete Werner, like they're just very solid at their points of their careers. They don't have a star, but I don't think solid is the worst thing in the world given where some of the rest of this roster is at.
Yeah, no, I think they could be a whole hell of a lot worse there.
Yeah.
Right. I think Kellen Moore even like brought up that he actually liked the linebackers when he came over here and took the job. And he said linebackers, like he was talking about Pete Werner in that. I'm probably maybe being too much of a hater on Pete. It's just like, you know, I just looked up his numbers. He's played in 56 career games. He's made 5 turnover-worthy plays, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception, and half a sack. Like that's a guy playing a lot of football for you at like a position where you kind of expect him to make plays in the ball. 5 pass breakups his entire career. Like I need to see more out of him than just kind of like being the guy who's like, you know, part of 4 guys making a tackle.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty interested in what the coaching staff has to say about that. Like Jeff, you mentioned Zach Bond. I don't think Pete Werner is going to suddenly turn into that, but is there something about this defense or what they ask of him to go make those bigger, you know, turnover-worthy plays? I'm sure Dennis Allen and his staff would have loved that as well. It's not like they weren't asking him to do that, but I just wonder if there's something about the system that can maybe unlock him a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and Luke's point about Werner, I think applies a little bit to the whole linebacker core. They just don't really have a playmaker there now that Demario's kind of taking a little bit of a step back. And I don't know if they're going to get that. I mean, I guess realistic expectations would be if you could get the same kind of year out of Demario you got a year ago, which is asking a lot at his age, you know, but I think the scheme, it's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts to this new scheme. It's a completely new transition for him at a you know, advanced age. And I know they're leaning on him to be still the captain of that defense. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how he plays this year at his age with his contract status and knowing that Stutzman was probably drafted to be his eventual replacement.
Yeah. One more point about Demario real quick. He had 16 missed tackles last year. That was the second most on the team. But this is where you hope the improvements up front or with, the addition of Justin Reid, like if they can contain the run a little bit better, you're not putting him in open space where he's asked to make those plays. Like the guys around him also need to step up. So you're not putting him in as disadvantaged, as a bad position as much as he was last year.
Yeah, your old team did that with Bobby Wagner last year. Yeah. Like they really covered him up, and he actually had a pretty good year. But you can see Wagner, when he gets in open space, it's a lot like Demario. I mean, these guys are hard to tackle for young, great athletes, right, in open space, much less a guy in their 30s that's played as much football as Demario has.
Maybe Kellen Moore just thought that the linebackers were good because he was like, well, look, they let Zach Bond go. The guys left must be all pros. I mean, of course I love the linebacker.
Well, let's also just not forget that Staley's entire upbringing is as a linebackers coach. He was a linebackers coach under Vic Fangio. Obviously, Vic Fangio's who got the most out of Bond last year. Like, there's definitely a chance that we're all like, me specifically are just like, linebackers, and they turn out to be really good this year. I think Staley's good with those specific players.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If there's a spot on this defense where maybe it's better than any of us think, this could be it. So, another spot, corners. Where as of right now, Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be on the outside on one side, and TBD is going to be on the outside on the other side, and Asante Samuel Jr. is still out there. This still feels very incomplete to me, guys.
I would expect this to look completely different by the time they line up against the Cardinals week 1. I mean, not completely different, but I'd expect like their week 1 starter opposite Kool-Aid is not on the team right now.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I think Quincy Riley needs to have a big camp. I mean, I think they would love for him to step forward and show something, but I mean, he hasn't been there the whole offseason. And I could see them definitely bringing in a starter, because I think ideally what they want is Kool-Aid McKinstry on one side, Alontae Taylor starts on the other, or maybe they bring in somebody to start there. But even if Taylor starts outside, he's going to slide inside to that star role in passing situations. So you basically have another starter that you have to find. And I think Riley is the guy they hope one day becomes that. But, man, that's a big question mark right now. He hasn't really been on the field yet.
I think Alontae Taylor might be the most interesting player on this roster that isn't the quarterbacks, in terms of, can he have a bounce back year? Does this scheme unlock his versatility? Because, I thought he had some nice plays last year, but teams went after him a lot. He was targeted he gave up 110 passes, or was he targeted? No, he was targeted 110 times.
110 times, yeah.
Gave up 79 catches for a league high 998 yards. Like, that is a ton of yards as a corner. And some of that tracking data, admittedly, from Pro Football Focus and others, like, it's a little wonky, but you saw it in the games. Like, teams really wanted to go after him at certain points, and he's a really prideful guy. I think he's a talented player. I just think he needs to hone it in a little bit better, and that's where coaching really comes into play. And so this is a really big year for him, especially because it's a contract year, I believe.
Yeah, he's like the inverse of Pete Werner, right?
Yeah.
Super playmaker who is sometimes just like a total mess up, but he's got so many just really intoxicating traits where you're like, that guy could be a star. Whereas like Pete Werner is just like, I'm just going to be in the right place all the time. I just think that if they can coach that out of him, and like they're clearly intending to go into this year with him as their star, as the like designated playmaker in the defense, like, yeah, you could see him like turning in a huge year and cashing in big time. If the Saints don't re-sign him before training camp. I'm with Dunk though. Like I am really worried about the depth here.
Yeah.
There's a chance Quincy Riley's really good. I loved him as a prospect coming in. I thought it was a great draft pick. But like you were really setting yourself up for potential disaster if you're going into a season where like at your best depth, you're like, we might have question marks here because one injury happens, and then you're like starting Quincy Riley and Ike Yadam. That's a scary proposition. Even if you've kind of like diminished like the need for star players because you're not playing as much man, I still think you need guys. You need like dependable guys, and I just don't like. I don't know if you could really say that about any one of their corners on this roster right now, where you're like, that guy, I know he's going to be dependable.
I mean,
two ups and downs. Alontae Taylor's ups and downs. Yeah, Yadam's been like a fringe starter in the past, and we have no idea what Quincy Riley is.
Yeah.
What about Kool-Aid?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead. You had another thought. Go ahead.
No. Just to that point, I mean, even when this team was really deep at corner, we saw it would be like week 13 and Ugo Amadi. It feels like that's his time of year where he just gets thrown in the lineup. And it's actually kind of important to have a player like that, like someone who knows what they're doing that can function. But you don't want him playing every week, and they are dangerously close to having Ugo Amadi play at a consistent basis.
Yeah, there was a couple years ago they cut Bradley Roby at the end of training camp, who's a pretty good player because they were so deep at corner, and then they trade C.J. Gardner-Johnson before the start of the season, and then like the next thing you know, they're starting Chris Harris at corner, who they signed off the street. So it's like I don't think you can ever go into a season feeling like you have enough options there, and right now it feels like they're short.
Yeah, and I think they're going to play a little less press man in this scheme, more match, and that may help a little bit on some of these guys that were getting attacked. Because I mean, Dennis Allen wasn't afraid. I know they played less press man as time went on with Allen, but he does at times leave those guys out there on an island, and they can be vulnerable. And it's easy for fans to see that, right? I mean, it's conspicuous. It's wide and open. You can see when a guy gets burned like a Debo and he has to hold. But I don't know if they're going to be put in as many of those vulnerable positions in this scheme with Staley as they were with Dennis Allen. And that might be a good thing with considering the unknown factor with all these guys right now.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, I'll say this too about injuries and depth. And I don't know that there's a lot of teams out there where if you took a position group and said, we're going to take away your top two guys, like there's probably a lot of situations where it would get sketchy pretty fast. So
yeah,
I don't know.
And look,
totally.
And they've got investments.
I'm talking about losing one guy.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's somebody else, right?
Like if they lose Alontae Taylor, like what are they going to do in the slot? Who's going to be their slot guy? Is it Ugo Amadi? Like
probably, yeah.
No? I mean, like they're precariously thin right now. Like one guy, one injury could make it look really, really bad. Like
one of the knocks on Staley's defenses in the past has been that he's been so fixated on not giving up the explosives and the big plays downfield. They play this shell coverage, and teams just, death by 1,000 paper cuts. I mean, they just move the ball at will up and down the field. And I think, it'll be interesting to see if that happens here. But, they're going to have to play really good red zone defense. And they've done that in the past under Allen, but it fell off last year greatly. And I think, again, can this scheme prop up what I think is probably an average defense at best, talent-wise, but can the scheme help? I think we're all going to find out.
Real quick before we move on, Kool-Aid McKinstry, what's reasonable for him in year two?
I think a leap is reasonable. I mean, he showed it during the spring, kind of to everyone's he caught people's attention in those off-season workouts, and that's what you want to see from a second-year player. He made a point to say to me that a lot of these corners they've played in a system like this before, where it's a lot of match zone coverage, and I think it can benefit. I feel like this scheme benefits this group's skill set, and I really think that applies to a guy like Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Luke.
No, I was just going to say I agree with Matt. Yeah, I think he's I'd be surprised if he had this true crazy breakout year, 6-7 interceptions or whatever, something like that, where he's really put on the map. But I do think he'll give him dependable starter play. which is like a big improvement over last year, I think.
And I think one of the reasons they have Kool-Aid McKinstry starting right now is because they had confidence, in him. They'd seen a progress last year and probably went into why they drafted, why they felt confident to trade Lattimore and to let Paulson Adebo walk was the confidence they have in McKinstry. So now he's got to step up, but I think we see it all the time where these second-year guys take a step forward.
Yeah, I think his rookie year is actually kind of maybe what you want from a rookie like that, in terms of you could sit the first few weeks, take in the game. I mean, he played week 2 when Lattimore was hurt, but generally had a pretty quiet role and then got thrown into the fire. So you kind of have that best of both worlds, to where you're learning early, you're getting some experience, and then now it's year 2 and you are in prime position to take that step forward. And he feels like he is. That's why, like, he has a lot of confidence, and it's pretty apparent when you talk to him. And
the buzz on him coming out of college is that he was such a smart player, and you could see where it would take a year to sort of learn a new level in a new league, and then maybe that leap is even that much bigger for him. So I think that's a key there. Moving on to safeties, Saints bring in Justin Reid to join with Tyrann Mathieu at this spot. Is Justin Reid like suddenly the most accomplished player on this defense, or the not most accomplished because Cam Jordan's accomplished, but the best player in his prime on this defense? I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I would not say that.
Who would you say is?
I would lower my expectations on Justin Reid. That's just me. I think if people think he's going to come in and be a, big time playmaker, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, but like I think he is. To Zach's point, though, I think he might be like the best in his prime player on the defense right now. Like, I can't think of anybody who would take over him if I'm like just drafting for the next 3 years on the Saints team right now.
Yeah,
Saints defense rather.
Look, I think he's gonna be a key part of what they're trying to do, and that's why they went out and aggressively signed him. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, fair.
I'm pretty high on it. I maybe have even talked myself more into it as it's gone along. I think they were really missing kind of his type of skill set last year. Thumper in the box, someone who, if he really improves their run defense, I think just having another veteran out there, you think about the mental mistakes the secondary made last year, specifically with Jordan Howden running into Will Harris and Marshawn Lattimore in that Eagles game that gave up that 60-yard catch, which swung the game. Like, having an adult in the room, I think, is a good thing. And I just think, even if Tyrann Mathieu's game kind of declines even more so than last year, then maybe that helps offset it. Like, I just think they needed some I understand why they targeted safety as the position in free agency to make a splash on. And because they made a splash on it, I think I think he's going to deliver on that. I think there was a reason they wanted him. I think he's a good player, and he doesn't have those accolades to where he's been a Pro Bowler and such, but maybe he gets there this year. I actually think maybe he might be their only Pro Bowl guy. I think he's a good player.
I think my question maybe says more about the state of the Saints defense than it does about Justin Reid. I don't know, because they don't have a lot of guys proven in their prime.
I think Reid is good though.
Yeah, he's a good player.
He's probably coming off of his best season as a pro too.
Matt, if what you said happens and Tyrann Mathieu does continue to decline and kind of goes, Father Time is undefeated, et cetera, what is the plan here? Is it Jonas Sanker? Is he the next man up?
Yeah, I'm not going to forget about him this time. Like a previous
I was about to if you
I specifically made a point when I was writing my safety preview article to be like, the wild card in this position is Jonas Sanker. I do think what's interesting about him, honestly, Tyrann Mathieu's like this too. They're box safeties. These guys thrive closer to the line of scrimmage, and I don't know who's going to be the back end. I mean, as Tyrann Mathieu, maybe Jonas Sanker can do some of that. Like, he's young enough. He's rangy. I just think, part of the early part of this season or as the season develops, like this coaching staff needs to find out who can do what, who fits together. And maybe that isn't Tyrann Mathieu. Like, it was very startling to see when Mathieu reported for mandatory minicamp. They really eased him into it. He only played like a handful of snaps those 2 days we were out there. They were with the second team. Now, some of the second team included Justin Reid, so like the coaching staff was looking how they fit together, but that made me wonder, all right, is his spot not as guaranteed as I thought? But at the same time, I would say that, the Saints made a priority to bring him back in the fold. They redid his contract. He's been a very important player for them. It's just, I do think there is potential to mix and match this a little bit more than the Saints have previously.
I think if Sean Payton were here, there's a chance that someone like Tyrann Mathieu might get cut, but no way is he going to get cut with this regime. But here's what I would say about Reid, going back to that real quick, because I think Matt's point, at this point of his career, Tyrann Mathieu, I think less is more, right? Same with Cam Jordan. They're going to have to play probably reduced roles. He's the first to admit. I mean, he got down to 185 last year, something like that, which is incredibly light for safety in the NFL. But he has to, at his age, to try and retain a little bit of the speed that he had. And so he knows he's not a great tackler at this point. He's not a physical player. He's got to stay on the field for other reasons. So I think Reid is going to be a key part of their run defense. His physicality, his ability to diagnose and come up, as he said, down the hallway from the second level, because they're going to play a lot of shell coverage too deep. But that doesn't mean that the safety isn't going to be a big part of the run defense. And I think that's going to be Reid. It's not going to be Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah. I will admit that I have an absolute soft spot for Tyrann Mathieu. And I still think that he can be a contributing player to this team if they're using him in the right way. And I think he's been honest that he's been used in a different way here than he was really anticipating, or really that he has been used in his career. I think he's still a really instinctive player who knows how to make a play on the ball. Even last year, in whatever diminished form he was in last year, he had 3 picks. He's got 10 interceptions in 3 years of the Saints. I think he's still a guy who can impact the game in a positive way with a smart coach. Do you want him on the field for 99% of the snaps? Probably not. But I do think there's still more there, even if he's not like the Tyrann Mathieu was 10 years ago.
Reasonable expectations. Justin Reid kicks an extra point.
Yeah,
I'd love that.
I'm going to say
preseason, sure.
That would almost take a Blake Groupie injury.
They would have to be like the swaggiest team in the NFL, and everybody's like, "Oh, the Saints are going to suck this year," and they go out and win 12 games. They blow somebody out, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead, Justin." That's
not the bold predictions episode, by the way.
No, that's not going to happen. Although, we did see it in training camp or mini camp, and he looked awesome. So
yeah, I thought he looked super solid. I would feel, compared to other position players in the NFL, I would feel comfortable.
Yeah. He's literally done it before in games. So.
Right. Okay, let's wrap it up. This has been a good discussion. I think there's a lot of back and forth on a lot of these positions where you go, there's not a lot proven, but if you squint hard enough, or Jeff, you've said a couple times, if the new scheme takes hold with these guys, we could see some improvement. But overall for the defense, what are your expectations for 2025 as we sit here 5 days from training camp?
Who wants to take this one?
I'll go. I mean, look, I think anything that's better than what they did a year ago would be, great for this team, because they finished 30th. I think a lot of that, though, was just, a byproduct of the season falling apart. And defense a lot of times is just effort and energy, and Les Miles would say want to, and it just felt like as the season wore on and the inevitability was, in view, that this defense kind of fell apart in some games. So new scheme, new attitude, new coaching staff. I don't think they can play that much worse. But if injuries, as we've all gone through these different position groups, I think it's a recurring theme. The frontline starters look like they're solid, if nothing else. And man, you really get into some depth issues, and we know more than likely there are going to be some injuries in this game. And right now, there's just so many unproven commodities behind the frontline guys that I don't see how this defense could get to middle of the pack. But it happened before with Staley. I think he did that. He took like a worst to first almost with the Rams back in the day. Of course, he had Aaron Donald back then too. But
I was going to say Aaron Donald ain't walking through those doors, my man.
I know. That's the problem is like when you look, there's no Cam Jordan in his prime on this defense right now. Is there anybody you think that could be a Pro Bowler? I mean, maybe Alontae Taylor. I don't know.
Justin Reid would be my
Alontae Taylor, Justin Reid could be, I think.
I mean, if you
I can see Chase Young being a Pro Bowler. Those are like the three candidates for me.
Agreed. Yeah, that's probably right.
Rod Walker would give you Chase Young 15 sacks.
Can't wait for the bold prediction episode when Rod's around.
So in other words, Jeff, Saints 2020 try that again. Saints 2025 defense. How much worse can it get? Is kind of the theme here. Luke, Matt, you guys have anything to add to that? I think that's probably right. Like, it can't be 30th again just because that was a bottom falling out scenario. But is it going to be top half? That feels optimistic.
I think top half is an unreasonable expectation. I think we're talking about reasonable expectations here. Like, say if they were to finish like 22nd, feel pretty good about it. I think the run defense is going to be better. I mean, that really dragged them down last year. I think that's going to be better. I think they'll maybe have some marginal improvements in other areas, but like I'm worried about their coverage. I'm worried about their pass rush. I don't think they're going to be a good defense. Like, I think those days are gone for this unit. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but like reasonably, I think like if they can get up to like 22, feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, other things. One area that they've just got to be better at explosives, like not allowing those. They give up the 6th most such plays last year. It was a huge problem for them all year long. That's where you hope the 2 high shell look like prevent some of those deep threats, even if they get dinked and dunked to death. Like, I think you would take that, and given how bad they were a year ago with explosive plays. The other thing is I think their offense is going to matter here. If the offense can sustain some drives, if the quarterbacks hold their end, then maybe this defense will be fresh and that where you could get to the 20s or maybe the low teens. Like but if the quarterbacks are a disaster, it could bottom out because they're going to be on the field all the time. They aren't going to have much chance to rest, and they're probably going to give up points. So I actually think the defense's potential also kind of is depends on the offense.
All right. So there you have it. I think our next episode will be training camp. And by the way, I wanted to say, you said Aaron Donald's not walking through that door. 2 years ago, nobody thought Jimmy Graham was walking through that door. That's not a prediction.
Now he's rowing through that door.
Through the Arctic.
Yeah, congratulations to Jimmy, by the way. That's pretty
awesome. What a badass.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good place to end. We will be back next week. Again, it's Tuesday for Mickey and then Wednesday for the first practice. Do I have that right, or am I off?
Yeah.
Okay, so we will meet up with you guys after that and talk our first impressions of training camp and what we heard from Mickey. So until then, for Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching the Saints Insider.